Welcome to Banishers Ghosts of New Eden review, you ghost-busting bastards. A review key was provided by the publisher, but that does not affect the review and my thoughts in any way. Gonna try not to spoil anything, but a major spoiler is immediately in the intro of the game, and it is unavoidable to present Banishers in any way without viewers being aware of what has happened. Finished the game on very hard and in 35 hours or so. Didn't bother with some of the side content because of the reasons I'll mention later. Don't know this the developer with couple of familiar titles under their belt like Vampyr and Life is Strange. Banishers is similar in style to modern God of War, so action-adventure focused on storytelling with an open world to a degree and RPG light elements. On PC, game looks amazing with fantastic setting, locations, good facial expressions and fantastic details on characters, NPCs and locations. Truly a stunning game. As we know though, polished third is just a third in the end without proper substance, and I can thankfully say that Banishers has a lot of substance. Especially when it comes to writing. It seems Don't Not have specialized in creating great stories with interesting characters. Banishers are essentially a more serious version of Ghostbusters that deal with the paranormal. As soon as the Banishers arrive at the new location, shit hits the fan and changes the lives of our two Banishers forever. One dies and becomes the ghost, which is the major intro spoiler I was talking about, and the other one is now faced with a brilliantly designed moral dilemma. Red is gonna continue dealing with the terrible situation New Eden has been put in thanks to a certain nightmare specter that has turned it all to shit. But while dealing with all of that, he's gonna have to decide if Antia's ghost should be ascended or should Antia be resurrected. Of course, they are in love and quite an interesting couple. Both got spunk and frequently provoke and joke with one another. Especially Red, who is a fantastic character full of charisma. Antia is a solid character without a doubt, but Red is written on a whole other level. If you like the Scottish accent next to good jokes, then Red is gonna remain a very enjoyable character throughout the game in most interactions. Moral dilemma comes from dealing with haunted cases throughout New Eden. Two sets of choices are available: spare or sacrifice. Sparing people leads to Antia's ascension, and sacrifice leads to Antia's resurrection. Second set of choices is to blame one of the haunted people, which leads to resurrection, and on the other side, ascending or banishing the ghost that did the haunting, which leads to Antia's ascension. Haunting cases are fantastically written and in my opinion the biggest selling point of the game. Every case is unique, with writing that explains humans in the most realistic way possible. By that I mean how it is easy to enter a morally grey area when things are affecting us, and to what depths of hell we are prepared to go in order to justify our own selfishness. Every case has an interesting story behind it that is gonna leave you questioning yourself what to actually do and how that would affect Antia. Cases are part of the side content as well, so not every case is tied to story progression.
Be gone.
Side content consists of quests, combat challenges and haunting cases. Quests are solid as they are connected to the main story, people and decisions made in the haunting cases, so they make a lot of sense in this world shaped by our decisions. Again, quality writing that is reintroducing characters in a sensible and purposeful way. Combat challenges are terrible, but I'll get to why later. I love the fact that our decisions are met later with palpable consequences and never in a clearly good or bad way. The way the game keeps morally grey areas as a focus throughout is phenomenal.
I want out. But if I am to disappear, the king must believe me exposed. Pennington must write London to inform on me. Paris will soon hear it.
Unfortunately, it seems Don't Nod has a pattern of problematic combat throughout their games, same as they have a pattern of fantastic writing. Combat is not bad, mind you, it is average to decent at best. So there is enjoyment to be had and good stuff in it, but movements are the big issue. Banishers tries to approach combat in a more realistic way of sorts, although moves are at times a bit too flashy, but movement is very rigid and wonky. What I mean by that is that upper body animations are quite good, but lower body movement is atrocious. Sliding during attacks and distance covering with instant movement animations makes it as far from the realistic as possible. Also doesn't work well with the target lock-on. This is a problem especially when playing such a beautiful and in a way more on the realistic side type of gameplay, but then robotic movements destroy the effect. Combat has good mechanics though and has a good impact feel. I love playing with the rifle as it truly has a great impact on enemies. Especially fun to shoot armored ghouls or whatever they are, listening to stripped armor pieces flying off the body. Melee attacks also have a good feel when they connect, unlike enemy attacks upon connecting with the red, which is quite weak. Main mechanic is switching between Antia and red, which is done great. They can interchangeably combo enemies, with Antia being more powerful against possessed entities and red being better against ghosts and specters. It is a simple combo system that works quite well, discounting the movement issues, with a couple special abilities that add more depth to the whole system, and of course the rifle, which is my favorite. So it is a sound system that would be brilliant with right movement animations, because it has that cool factor at times to it when combining proper switch combinations, special abilities and rifle attacks. Enemy diversity is average, as it definitely lacks a little bit more enemy types to make things more interesting, but the biggest issue is AI, that is terrible, especially in boss fights. This is where all the rigidness is on full display and how Banishers combat works in a straight line, for the lack of a better phrase. Bosses look cool, but AI makes them extremely predictable and exploitable due to the same attack patterns coming one after another. Red uses saber and torch dual wield style that is quite cool, and Tia uses punches and special abilities, and also there is a rifle in the mix for red. It is a shame that more weapon types are not in the game, as it would add a lot more flavor to combat. Combat has just enough depth to be interesting despite its flaws, but the devs really fucked up by introducing combat challenges, because Banishers doesn't have the depth and diversity that would make these challenges interesting. Instead, they limit most of the moveset so that only 1, 2 or 3 specific attacks do increase damage, but everything else is on minimum. This leads to extremely boring encounters that go way too long, especially on very hard. When I say way too long, I don't mean like an interesting battle of the minds and movements, but instead the same patterns repeated one after another to focus on the increased damage attacks. Difficulty design is not good either. Simple increased damage and health bars, which leads to frustrating encounters at times, even though the game is too easy even on very hard. So basically you get caught by 2 hits on very hard and it's over. As I said, even with that it is too easy, which just proves how terrible disbalanced the design is. However, there is one good thing about the difficulty changes. Health potion replenishment heavily depends on the difficulty level, to a point that on very hard it doesn't replenish at all except when resting. I like that change a lot. Devs need to start figuring out that 2-hit kills is not a difficulty design. It is a cheap mechanic to artificially increase the feel of a difficulty, because it doesn't have the necessary tools in place to challenge the player in a more meaningful and rewarding way. Character progression is decent, with gear influencing specific attacks, be it punching from Antia, rifle attacks with red, special attack damage increase, spirit and banish points accumulation, and so on. Red and Antia are also defined by a joint attribute system that honestly is completely unnecessary. Basically each item has attributes, but usually they are complementing affixes anyway. Upgrading gear increases the attributes, which are not of utmost importance due to difficulty disbalance anyway, except when tackling those boring challenges. Upgrading gear exists so that players would have to collect resources, which prolongs game time, not in a good way, when it comes to a story and writing driven game like Banishers. What you want to do in Banishers most of all is experience the story and see what each haunting case has in store, not running around collecting plants and doing challenges that give you a whopping +1 to all attributes as a first tier reward. So essentially Banishers is forcing players that want to challenge themselves through badly done challenges to use their upgrade system that doesn't add anything good to the game by doing tedious tasks, that is collecting resources and gathering experience. On the other side of the character progression coin, there is a branching skill tree that affects a lot of things, but not every single one can be used, even if the player has enough points to purchase every upgrade, because there is only one choice out of the 2 that can be active per branch. I like that, as it gives more meaning to the whole skill system, so that the player needs to pay attention to how to better complement gear and skills. Experience system is totally unnecessary, as it doesn't offer anything other than cheap deaths, tedium and slower progression on higher difficulties. Enemies suddenly become much tougher to kill due to high HP and kill the player much easier just because of arbitrary level increase. So then to progress more, naturally more grind and side content is required, otherwise whole experience suffers. As I said already, Banishers is a tremendous looking game with beautiful locations, great facial expressions, cool looking enemies, great visual effects, tons of details on equipment, locations and NPCs, but on PC it crashes often, which is gonna affect the score in the end. Audio is also great with great ambient music, voice acting and sound effects. Time for the final verdict. Due to constant crashes on PC, I have to lower the score by 1, so my final score is 6 out of 10, which means a decent game, but as soon as crashes are fixed, up the score to a 7 out of 10, which means a good game in my book. It can't reach 8 due to design mistakes mostly relating to combat and character progression, but writing is on a very high level that offsets mediocrities in other areas. If Dontnod gets better combat designers, then the studio could enter the highest echelon of gaming in terms of quality. Anyway, that is it. Thanks for watching and see you soon.